Afternoon. My name is Josh Neiswanger from Thomasville, Georgia. The article that I read this week that I'll be presenting is The Peddler in Divinity, George Whitefield and the Great Awakening by Frank Lambert. Mr. Lambert brings out two major themes of the article. Number one, examines Whitefield's promotional strategies used during his ministry. And the second one takes a closer look at the relation between commerce and religion. Theme number one, Whitefield used marketing to promote the gospel, kind of ushering in modern revivalism. Whitefield's use of newspaper advertising made him one of the best known figures in the world. Whitefield and his supporters, such as Seward and Ben Franklin, would puff up the stories and the successes that could be found in his revivals. And this would help Whitefield gain publicity, as we can see, especially before his arrival in 1740 in New England. His name had already been out there. Stories had been put in newspapers, and the New Englanders were excited about his coming. Whitefield was also able to use tension and sometimes negative views of his ministry to push his revivals. His revivals went against the Anglican traditional worship. Another article that I researched by William Kinney, entitled George Whitefield, Dissenter, Priest of the Great Awakening, it described Whitefield as an anti-establishment figure, especially to the Anglican Church. His revivals had an impact on the nation or on the colonies in their revolutionary journey. Religious liberty from the Great Awakening would begin to transform to political freedom, which would come in the Revolutionary era. Whitefield would also utilize marketing strategies to help spread the gospel to everyone, especially to the poor. In reading Frederick Mills, Samuel Davies, George Whitefield, John Rogers, and the Legacy of the Society for Promoting Religious Knowledge Among the Poor, you will see he says that Whitefield would dramatize the issues with poverty. He was also able to persuade those that had the ability to give. He was able to persuade them to give to that cause. He also was able to push publishers and printers to try to print his sermons and his different pamphlets for a cheaper cost, so that the poor would have access to these sermons and that they would be able to read them and come to know Christ. And this was a major part. If you read the article, you will see all the different strategies that Whitefield would use, most of it being publicity driven by advertising, but also some marketing strategies that would also help sell a lot of his material. As we move to theme 2, Whitefield had many different commercial influences in his life that would influence his perception and use of commercialism when it came to religion. Some of these strategies that he would eventually use within his life may have been influenced by his father and brother, who were both entrepreneurs, his dad owning an inn and his brother being a ship captain transporting goods from place to place. He also had many family acquaintances that would help influence him later on. He had family friends who were bookstore owners, so he got more of a love to read and be knowledgeable in that area. He also had friends who were newspaper printers, so he knew of what advertising could possibly do. He knew that arena. He was also able to use commercial dealings to help with his charities. Now, there is a negative aspect to this commercialism that, as I was reading another article and that I kind of got from this article, his stance on slavery. He did own a slave himself. And reading from Stephen Stein's George Whitefield on Slavery, Some New Evidence, Stein's going to point out that Whitefield's philanthropy sometimes was helped by slavery. If we look at the Bathsheba orphanage, it was funded a little bit by slavery. Also, even though this was a negative impact of commercialism with regards to Whitefield's evangelism, most of the stuff he did was actually very beneficial when it dealt with commercialism, that actually would benefit his ministry. If we look at Whitefield's approach as a whole, with his being able to blend commercialism with evangelism, he was able to pretty much show the new model of how Christian business owners can use their wealth to be able to promote causes for Christ. And this is where that modern revivalism kind of steps in, and many of our evangelists of the 20th century have benefited from businessmen pushing them and giving them money to be able to help advance their cause and the cause of Christ. Thank you so much.